Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so very excited today to be in conversation with Miss Nasreen Variava. And let's just give it a few more seconds for everyone to join in. Hi, Nasreen.
Hello there, Sapna. How are you doing?
Hi, very good. I hope you're having a good day.
It's a wonderful day. Thank you so much for having me.
Likewise, thank you. Thank you so much for chatting with agreeing to chat with us. And I'm very excited to talk about your books, to talk about your life and all the lessons. So we're just going to wait for about maybe 10 more seconds before before I start off badgering with you with my questions.
No problems at all.
Yeah, yeah. Right. So, hi everybody. Good afternoon. We are live today. Universe Talkies is live in conversation with Ms. Nasreen Varyava. Uh, Nasreen is joining us from the city of Bursa in Turkey. And there is a very special connection here that I want to highlight that Nasreen's family is originally from India. So, Nasreen, thank you so much for being here today. I extend you a very warm welcome on behalf of everyone who's watching us today. A little bit introduction of Nasreen. Nasreen is actually quite a multifaceted personality. She has two Amazon bestsellers under her belt. There's Ignite the Champion Within and Inspire Others to Begin. And interestingly, there is Aspire to Inspire Poems that Elevate Your Speech. She's also a prolific co-author. She's co-authored Ignition, Answering Your Call with Dr. Farooq Sensei, Rise with Sabina Matharu, Coach Wisdom with Divya Jagasundaram and Snehal Singh, Golden Truths with Tahira Amir Khan, and the phenomenal leader Musings of the Prophet Muhammad. She's an editor, she's a ghostwriter, she's a creative force behind many, many bestsellers. Nasreen has been on many talk shows, including Ignition with Farooq Sensei, Munira's Musings by Munira Zahabi, Golden Truths by Tahira Ahmad Sultan, Expert TV with Melanie Falvey, Chat with Me and Nasreen V by Coach Middle East. And she also happens to be quite a popular choice guest for podcasts and blogs for places like BBN Times, Literary Mirror, Tina Edit, and Yuvati Mags. Nasreen was recently selected to be part of a panel of speakers at the Women Entrepreneurship Summit. This is a unique feather in her cap. She's been nominated among top 20 authors at the Golden Door Awards, which is a first in world records for recognizing the role of truth writers. So she has a unique take on things in her writing, and there is a term that you'll be hearing when we are deeper in conversation with her, which is Nasreeniology. Nasreeniology is a brand coined from her name and is actually growing in popularity. This is something we're definitely going to be chatting about today. With a bio like that, I can't wait to hear more about her. Her latest book, which is tentatively titled Exceptional Authors Are Authentic, is on the verge of release. And guys, this one is especially for aspiring authors. So that's quite an impressive bio, Nasreen. You guys have heard enough from me now. Let's hear from Nasreen herself. At any time during our conversation, people please feel free to post your questions here. I'll try to incorporate them and Nasreen will answer these. So Nasreen, hi, welcome, good afternoon, good morning for you. After that slightly formal introduction, which was awing for me because you know you have achieved so much. So let's take it a little casual. Please tell us more about yourself. We would love to know, did you always want to be an author? Is this something that one day an inspiration struck you? How was your talent discovered?
Well, first of all, thank you, Sapna, for that awesome introduction. Um, I am actually from South Africa. That's where I was born. And I spent a large part of my life working in corporate training. And it was there that I actually started writing academic material. Creative writing has always been a part of my life, a part of my makeup. I always did well at it at school, at college. So I've always been writing. But the thought to actually become an author never occurred to me. I was working in education and training, and I was quite happy helping others to achieve their own dreams in a different way. But then, you grow. And wanderlusting soon took my attention, and I decided to swap the stilettos and suits for lab coats and trainers and come out here to Turkey and try my hand at ESL teaching. which is how I ended up in Turkey. And it was supposed to have been a 1 or 2 year stint. And then I thought I'd go back to South Africa and I'd, begin my stint again at corporate training. Well, I fell in love with Turkey, and I've been here more or less for the last 6 years, um, teaching ESL, and then growing myself further and developing myself further into authoring, which happened quite by accident. Uh, it was uh, uh, it was a challenge that I found myself on through a leadership program by Dr. Sensei, and the challenge was to write a book in 1 month. So I got
Wow,
started
okay.
on that, and if anybody who knows me knows that if you challenge me with something like that, especially something that I enjoy, I'm going to do it. I'm going to achieve it. So through his guidance and leadership, this first book came out, and I I rediscovered uh, my passion for writing by taking up this challenge. And then I never looked back. The opportunities kept coming, the ideas kept coming, and I've now grown beautifully into it, and that's a wonderful thing. So that's how it all happened for me.
So that's quite the story. It has so many elements. There's travel, there's passion, there's all the learning that you got from your corporate training, there's your desire to help others, and I think frankly a small dose of serendipity as well, where everything comes together. So there's serendipity, life experiences, passion, and which leads me to my next question, which I think you're asked a lot. So you have to bear with us because so many of our viewers want to actually know. You often hear people saying everyone has a story within, you just need to channel it. So, is the ability to be an author an innate talent, or is it a process that you think can actually be learned?
It's a combination of both. The truth of the matter, I believe, is that there are those people who are born with it. Uh, they're effortless. They don't have to have a creative writing teacher at school, for example, to enjoy a creative writing lesson. It is something that comes naturally. When the teacher gives a topic, they go for it. And
Right.
that's when you know the child is innate in his or her writing. But writing can also be learned. There are those people who feel that they have the ability to write, but they need help, and those are the people that actually go for formal training, and then turn out beautiful books. So it's a combination of both. Whether you're an innate writer or a learned writer, development, I believe, in whatever sphere you are in, is extremely important. So, whether you're practicing law like yourself or teaching like myself, development must continuously take place in order for growth to take place. So, whether it starts at within the college walls or it starts as a challenge, it
Yes.
requires learning. So, for me, it's a combination of both that actually matters. One enhances the other, I like to say.
I like the fact that you say that these factors are both sort of interlinked, and we'll chat more about it on author coaching and other things on how one can reach their aspirations of being a better writer. But I started in the introduction with the concept of with the term Nasreeniology, which when I was reading up more about you to prep a few questions, I was very intrigued by. So I know that among the many hats you wear, you are an author coach. What is an author coach all about? Do you think it's an essential person required for anyone who's an aspiring writer?
Um, yes and no. There is a difference, and I think everybody must learn this difference. There's a difference between a writing coach and an author coach. A writing coach will focus on developing your writing skills. An author coach will delve deeper. You would go to an author coach when you have the ability to write, but you're not sure exactly how to start this process. Where do you
Right.
begin? How do you break down this entire bunch of grapes? I like to call them. Thank, with thanks to my husband. You know, in English we always say you got to eat part of an elephant part by part. Uh, but he likes to say, he says in Arabic, which because he's Arab, he says "aklal inab habba habba," means that you eat a bunch of grapes, you know, one grape at a time.
One by one. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So an author coach is helping you to eat that bunch of grapes one by one. You start at a certain point and you finish at a certain point. We take you right through the process until you get published. Because the world of publishing is ever evolving, and the author coach is in a position to direct your writing with purpose towards the end and to get you published for purpose. Non-fiction writing is different from fiction. You know, fiction is science fiction, romance, this and that. And whether you produce one or the other, whether you write one or the other, there's an audience for it. But
Right.
in non-fiction writing, there's always a purpose attached to it. And many people come to you and say, "Well, I want to write a book, but I don't know how." What they really mean is, I know what I want to write, I know the topic, but I don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
So, an author coach will ask the correct questions to get a person to discover by themselves what they want to write about, why they want to write it, who they are writing for, and what do they already know about this topic that they can contribute to this book? What do they still need to know in order to get to where they want to go? So it's a combination of things. It's an entire process that an author coach will take you through from beginning to end, because the process doesn't end at publishing your book. Well, how
Absolutely.
is this book going to help you? Okay, leave the people that you're writing for alone, that you're going to help write the book. How is it going to help you? In what way are you expecting this book to benefit you? Do you want it to grow a current business? Do you want to go into public speaking? Um, or do you just want to be an author and want to make a billion gazillion amount of dollars through it? What is your purpose? What do you want to do with it? So, an author coach takes you to the end until you achieve that process and guides you through that process.
So that's interesting because first of all, to begin with, I had no idea there's a difference between a writing coach and an author coach. But I loved how very beautifully explained this very holistic process from start to finish, from hand holding to actually searching and helping the person be the best version of themselves as an author, which again goes back to the previous question on innate ability versus how one can become a better author. And thank you, that was a wonderful answer. As an author, we've seen how many hats you wear, how busy you are. So what does a typical day look like for you, and how do you maximize your time so that you get your best writing done? Is there a part of the day when you work best?
For me, it's a question of being able to give answer and accountability to myself at the end of the day. There are a few things that I like to be able to say yes to. What have I done for my career today? What have I done for myself today? What have I done to grow in spirituality and closer to my Lord today? What have I done for my health and wellness today? What have I done for my family today? Okay. If I have been able to say yes to those things at the end of the day, I consider that, productive enough, because I am not the kind of author who is guided by time necessarily, unless I'm working on a time related project that has a deadline. Then yes, Nasreen's maximum working time, optimum working time is early in the morning. But essentially, my day would look like the early morning prayer. That is when it would start. Then my husband and I like to take this walk every morning for about an hour and a half. And that sets the tone for the day, really, because when I get back, I'm energized enough to be able to, have breakfast, have a shower, sit at my desk, and work a good couple hours with focused writing before I think about anything else. But it's also a question of time management. I like to plan my meals so that I don't fall down in the sphere of being a wife and a home executive as well. So I like to
Right.
plan all that. All that comes together, beautifully in a single day, thank God. But essentially, I think it's important to rather have a balance rather than an overload of something. Unless you are working on time-driven projects, it's important to be able to get all those questions answered at the end of the day, so there is that balance, because you don't want to be an exceptional writer but have extreme ill health. You don't want to be an exceptional writer but be an extremely bad partner or mother. You want to be able to get it all in without feeling stressed about it all. That for
So this
me is
there's
the
so much
magic.
to take away from this because you said it very calmly. This what I've taken away is the ability to find the right balance and also finding the joy in small things and not letting the number of words written per day describe you. Here we've got a very interesting question from one of our viewers, Anita Mishra, who asks, author coach and writer coach, is this a differentiation that you've created? Because in common parlance, we all end up using writer and author quite interchangeably.
Yes. I know that it is commonly used interchangeably, but for me, and this is Nasreeniology, writing coach is called a writing coach because they focus on your writing. Author coach is called an author coach because they are focused on your career and what you want to achieve. We are not only your writing coach, we are also your lifestyle coach, your mindset coach, your motivation, your inspiration, your guide beyond the book and publishing it, you know. For me, there's a huge difference, and that's why I say that there is that difference.
And that's such a wonderful differentiation. Like you just described the whole process of writing a book, the whole process is so much more than just, the words that you type. So, and you referred to the hand-holding or the guidance that the coach would give. So, could you share three lifestyle and three mindset tips that would come in handy for an aspiring author?
Yeah. The first thing I'd like to tell the audience is that when I talk about lifestyle, I'm not talking about doing a complete lifestyle makeover. This doesn't need to necessarily involve loads of money to change a room in the house so that you have an office to write in. This
Right.
requires having you use what you already have, tweak it, and create something that is uniquely yours. My office is set up in what is supposed to be a bedroom, okay, on a dining room table. That is not. The only thing that is office about it is my chair, but it works for me. I'm supposed to have a green screen behind me if I want to cut videos. I don't. I have a couple of art sheets stuck to the wall. But this is what I talk about. This is why I like to focus on this, because authors see what is on social media, aspiring authors especially, they see what is on social media and they start hyperventilating about how to achieve that. And so, if you are a member on any social writing group, you will very, very seldom see questions that are related to the technical aspects of writing. They are more hyper about should they have an office or not? What kind of laptop should they have? What tools do they need for writing? Should they be working with music or not? Is it a problem if they type in their bedrooms or not? And um, I just like authors to relax and say that that will come. Start focusing on getting the writing done first. So that's my first tip. My second tip is take what you already have and make it unique. If you eat a salad every day, don't eat the same salad every day. Or eat the same salad every day, but throw a couple of nuts in tomorrow because it's good for your mental
Yeah.
abilities, your thinking capacity. If you go for a walk down the road every day, up the hill every day, change it and go down the road towards the sea on another day because it's a different space, a different time. It gives you a different feeling for that day. It gives you a different motivation for that day. Um, do things like that. Um, if you're the kind of person that can't work with noise around you, find quiet spaces, go off to a coffee shop. Um, use a friend's dining table for a particular day. It doesn't matter. Take what you already have. Achieve your goal no matter what. Your lifestyle is of no consequence unless you are open minded about tweaking what you already have and making the most of what is already there. The best will come later, all right? Then, in terms of lifestyle, I also like to tell authors that it really, really is no, um, it is not, oh boy, I'm lost for words. Can you believe it? It's not a coincidence
Take your
that
time.
Nora Roberts or Danielle Steele look like they do at the back of their covers. It happens
Yeah.
because they have a lifestyle that is conducive for authoring. They keep healthy, they eat healthy, they keep a positive mindset. Um, they don't just glow because of the camera lights when they're taking that author shot for that particular book. So this is my
True. Yeah.
this is what I like to talk to young authors about. It will come, but you've got to tweak a few things to get there. If you look at my first photo used on at the back of the cover of my first book, I look exactly like uh, I used. I look exactly like the lifestyle I was leading, which was a very sedentary lifestyle. I am diabetic. I was overweight. I spent most of my time alone writing. I didn't have much of a social life. I didn't want to get out there and exercise. And then, if you look at the photos being taken now, there are two different types of photos. Now they say confidence, they say weight loss, they say I'm in control, they say I'm enjoying what I'm doing, they say you're happy. And that's what you want to aim for. You don't want to just produce a bestseller and don't look the part. You want to produce the bestseller and be happy with it and be in it authentically. So, your health is very important. The food you eat is important. Um, what else? Not everybody can afford to take a holiday twice a year. Not everybody can afford to travel internationally. But a little trip to the local market uh, through the um, uh, through the alleyways of shopping centers, outdoor shopping centers, the local vegetable markets, the walk up the hill, all of those provide some sort of fodder and inspiration for that book you want to write.
Just a
So,
change of scenery. So,
just a change of scenery, but it does require mindfulness because you can pass a beautiful park by and look at it and say, okay, it's a park, and go back home. Or you can pass a beautiful park, notice a wonderful tree, and imagine, well, what if my hero meets my heroine under this tree?
yeah.
So that's an attitude. That's a mindset thing. It's also a lifestyle thing. It's about how authors approach their lives to meet successfully with their authoring careers.
So thank you, because all these tips started off as tips for budding authors, but I think these are tips that all of us can incorporate and we would do very well to incorporate in our daily life. So thank you so much for these. And while we were chatting about this, there have been some questions that popped up. There's a question from Vidya, who I think this whole conversation about writing and author coach. Vidya wants to know, should one first start with a writing coach and then move on to an author coach? Is that what you would recommend?
It depends on where you are. You could be a fabulous writer right now and you wouldn't need a writing coach. Writing is not necessarily about getting the technicalities right. It's about writing engagingly, whether and to get your audience engaged in your book, and that is what makes your book a success. So whether you got the technical bits right or wrong is irrelevant to a majority of readers. Readers want to be entertained or readers want to learn. Okay? You don't have to be a perfect writer. The first draft, by the way, is always terrible. The author coach is somebody who is there to hold your hand through an entire process. They are not necessarily fantastic technical writers either, but they
Right.
are good motivators. They do tap into their intuition and they can very, very easily connect with people so that they can see their vision. They can share their vision. And then they work towards getting the writer to achieve that vision. So it all depends on where in your life you are. What is your own assessment of your writing ability and what do you want to achieve? Remember, I'm not saying that those that call themselves writing coaches aren't author coaches. And I'm not saying that anybody who calls themselves author coaches aren't writing coaches. Okay, the term for some is interchangeable. You just need to connect yourself with the correct person.
And depending on what situation you are in, what stage of your
Absolutely.
writing process you are in. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You know, your first two books, like I said, have been bestsellers, and I'll shorten the names here and say "Ignite the Champion Within" and "Aspire to Inspire." We'd love to hear more about these books, if you could, and particularly about how you chose the verse form or poetry as to write about motivational poetry in "Aspire to Inspire."
Um, Ignite the Champion actually happened while I was writing the first book. The first book, which was a challenge, is available free on my website for anybody to download. And because I was on a leadership program, the team and I decided that we would write a book regarding leadership, but we would tell it as stories. So we put together this wonderful book full of stories, leadership oriented stories, and anybody who's interested can go and download it from the website. It's absolutely free, no problems. Ignite the Champion happened while I was writing that book. And it's not that all the ideas came at once. Over the years, when you've been in education and training or through life's experiences, you're constantly having internal self talk. Your ideas are constantly developing. You may never have written them down, or you may have written them down in some book that is rotting on some shelf, but it's there. So, Ignite the Champion is a book of quotes, original quotes, that is actually what we can call Nasreeniology. Because what is Nasreeniology? Nasreeniology is the way Nasreen sees things through her intuition, through her mind. Let's put that in perspective. Um, a lot of authors use the term power of one, okay? And they attribute that phrase to God Almighty, okay? Because He is the one power of the entire universe. Well, what is Nasreen's take on the power of one? Except that. Nasreen's take on the power of one is that all it takes is one book, one coach, one person to believe in you, one teacher, and one willing student to make a dream come true. Whether you are the teacher or the student, both lives change for the better, irrespective. What's my point? My point is that it doesn't matter where that comes from. Learning can come from everywhere. All it takes is one person to change it all. When you're a coach, put that in perspective. When you're a coach, when I decide that I will coach you, I change your life and your perspective as a writer, as an author. But my life also changes because learning is interchangeable. You are my power of one, I am your power of one. That for me is Nasreeniology. I also have this tendency, Sapna, to never take what is the norm and then just represent the norm for my audience. Strange thoughts or unusual thoughts occur to me in the most normal of circumstances, like an Indian wedding, for example. That
Yes.
is Nasreeniology. It's my take on things. It's not anybody else's take. Aspire to inspire is also another form of Nasreeniology. Everybody writes poetry, and there are lots of motivational poems, inspirational poems out there. The market is flooded with them. But how does this happen? Well, I was, asked to give a presentation, and on the night before, I was sitting down looking for something powerful to say to the audience before, launching into my presentation. And what I found on the internet was quotes, from the greats, the Les Browns, the Farooq Senseis, the um, you know them. They out of the top of my head, they all move out. But the greats and their quotes, they
Emerson and
stick.
Lincoln
Yes,
and so
Jim
many
Rohn
that you read about. Yeah. Yeah.
and all these people, they say great things. But when you look through that stuff and you will see that there is either a regurgitation of it in another version, or there is a different version, but a really cheap spin off of it. And you're looking to be inspired yourself by something you can use to inspire your audience with, and you find nothing. Nasreeniology for me then is to look to myself for something powerful. And that evening, I wrote a poem to start that delivery with. And then I said to myself, well, if I'm an orator and I use poetry successfully to open or close a presentation, is there not an audience who will want to do the same if they were powerful speakers enough, if they were good enough orators enough, or if they were the kind of orators who challenge themselves enough? Wouldn't they want to use it? And that's how Aspire to Inspire was born. And that was written specifically for motivational speakers. But it's been used at school, it's been used practically through all age groups. It really has. It's been written simply, so there hasn't really been a problem with it being used across the board.
So that's what I want to speak to you about because I had the opportunity to read a few poems from your book. And what struck me that the words are as relevant for a young child or a teenager as much as they are for an adult. They're very simply written, and I'd like to read just four lines from your poem, from the poem One for All, where you say, "Listen up, I tell you. Don't say that you forgot, that dignity and respect cannot be simply bought." And these words just struck a chord right away. So Did you, like, you answered pretty much most of my question, but I wanted to know, did you have a particular age group of a readership in mind when you wrote this? Because I feel like this is ageless. I feel like I can talk to my 13-year-old children about this as much as I can talk to a grown-up about this in good times and bad.
I did have the adult age group in mind when I wrote it, mostly because I had written it for motivational speakers. But when you sit down to write, one of the key aspects of my writing, when I sit down to write and I finish something, is I ask myself, is this simple? Because I keep to a principle and I call it the KISS principle. Keep it simple, short, sweet, and savory. So I assess my work based on that principle. Is it short? Is it sweet? Is it simple? Is it savory? And I think it just happened that every poem in the book, although it's written for an adult audience, it has turned out simply enough and savory enough for all age groups to enjoy. And there's a variety of poems in there. It's not only about leadership. It's not only about inspiring. It's not only about motivation and this and that. It's also about life and living. How about the abused woman? What should she do? How about parents? What do they mean to us? They're a big part of our lives that we have forgotten about today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, what about the animals? How we treat them? What about great leaders and what we have to learn from them? You know, so there's a combination. There's 100 poems in there, and it just it's across the board for everybody about practically everything.
You're right. They are. They cover such a diverse arena of topics, but all written very, very simply. So thank you. We've got another question about could you offer some practical tips on writing an all-encompassing autobiography?
Um, I've done one by autobiography and half of another. Practical tips are these, and I'm going to give you just three to keep it simple. The first is, in an era of false news, make sure that your research comes from credible sources. Second, the best way to research for a biography is the person you are writing about, himself or herself. When it comes directly from the horse's mouth, there's no question about whether it's authentic or not. So that is the second thing. And the last thing, please don't write a necessarily a just a historical account of a person's life. If you want readership for autobiography, then you have to engage readers with the extraordinary about that person. So whether that comes in the form of little anecdotes that the audience doesn't necessarily know about the person, or it comes in poetry, or it comes in um, things that you've noticed about the person that that person doesn't know you've noticed about them. Add it into the biography. Obviously, it goes, for final confirmation to the person you're writing about. But don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid also to mix genres. The autobiography that I'm talking about, that I finished for, that I coached one client for, is a whole book of poetry that is based on her life.
Wow, that's
You know,
fascinating. Yeah.
so and you would never say that it's just a book with a cluster of poems. It's a book that starts off with poetry about her childhood and her memories from there. Her first marriage and what happened to it and what she thinks about it now, and then finding love again in another relationship and what that is like cross culturally, in a book of about 160, 170 odd pages full of poetry, which is beautifully done. Not
Wow,
by
this
me,
one I
by
have to
her.
read.
I'm just her
Yeah.
coach. But When I presented the idea to her, she stopped. She looked at me and she said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" And she said, "Okay, I'm game if you're game." I said, "Well, I haven't done this before." And she said, "Okay, I'm game if you're game." And you know what? 3 months later, it was done. And we're going to start the next phase.
That's just lovely, and that question was from my dad, so I thank you on his behalf. There's another question from Jayanti, who's welcomes you to India and says thank you for talking to us. We love Turkey and wish to be able to travel again there. I'd like to ask you, how did you find the major shift from working with education brands to active teaching? And of course, was there a particular reason for this, for the shift that you made?
Okay. Um, it's a big shift, and you have to be very brave to make that shift. When you're doing corporate training, you're talking to an audience that is different from the ones you speak to at school. Whereas learners in corporate training um, they're self-motivated. They're there because they want to be there. Learners at school are motivated by a completely different set of things. And you have to shift your mind from just the icebreakers in a training room to getting kids excited about what is going to be done for that day in a very
Yeah.
different way. They are motivated by totally different things. And when I first set foot into a classroom in my white clothes, in my white lab coat, and I stood in front of this grade one class, I smiled and then I had no idea what to say. And I thought to myself, what were you thinking? Uh,
How did you get
uh,
out of it? What did you do next?
I don't quite remember. It was a long time ago, but I said hello and I just smiled and they were smiling at me. And then I just pressed play on a record button and an English song came on and I said, "Come on, everybody, let's get up and dance." And that's all we did all lesson. That was all I could bring myself to do for that lesson. And it comes with proper planning, proper coaching from your fellow teachers, your mentors at school. You get through the process. Observation of other teachers and how they conduct their lessons. You get an idea of what's going on and how different the audience is. It's a big shift to make, but let me tell you, it's a very exciting shift when you get the hang of it because you get to be a child. You know, you get to wear those trainers every day. You get down on your knees and talk to little people. You get to enjoy their little, be parts of their little childish conversations. So you figure out how their mind works. It's also very challenging if you don't have children of your own because you don't understand where they come from and what motivates them, what excites them initially, and then you learn as you go along. Um, I say this all the time: challenge yourself to do what you say you can't. Be brave about it and enjoy it. That is the only way to get past whatever you want to do.
And I think the company of children must have been amazing because so many times we hear people saying the reason that adults sometimes can't find happiness is because we've forgotten what it is to be a child or to find the child within us. So thank you for sharing this great experience with us here. And
You're
I want to
welcome.
go back to a very focused question that a lot of budding authors would want to know from you. Because many a time we read about authors being very dissatisfied with editors once their books have been edited. Do you have any tips you'd like to share with authors about the whole process of picking an editor?
Yes. There's the usual obvious but authors don't do, especially new authors. But I don't blame them because they're lost in this industry when they enter it. The first is that your author needs to be qualified to be an editor. The second is that, and when I talk about qualification, I'm not talking about that the fact that that person needed to have gone to to some school to become an editor. If they have a qualification at it, great. That means they know what they're doing. But I talk about qualifying editors with their experience. Are they experienced at editing in the genre that you are writing? This is very important. You cannot hand a science fiction book over to a non-fiction editor and expect the editor to do justice to your book. And an editor in that genre taking on a science fiction book is doing injustice to the author, which is why you get this problem. Because a non-fiction editor is not going to understand what is written. The mind of a science fiction author um, or a murder thriller is different. They don't. Some things like I don't get mathematics. I get words, but I don't get mathematics and I don't get science. So if you bring a science book to me and say edit it, I will refuse point blank. Not because I can't edit it, but because I don't know what I'm reading. And if I don't know what I'm reading, I don't touch it. So make sure that the editor is from the same genre and has experience in editing. Look at the track record. Ask people in your writing groups, in your writing circles, who have they worked with before? Are they satisfied or not with the editors that they used? But the third most important thing, and this is stepping out of the usual, get to know your editor. Do your editor and you share the same values? Do you have stuff to talk about outside of the book? Do you get along? Does your editor share your vision? But most importantly, is your editor as excited about your book as you are about it? Because if it is just about editing the book for the editor, there's most likely going to be dissatisfaction with the editing because you don't share the vision. You're not excited about the same thing. There's
Yeah.
no developmental advice or direction coming from your editor. And when there isn't that, editing is not just about snipping a word here and cutting a sentence off there. Editing is about the big picture. Does this work? Does this flow? What can be done to make it better? And if you don't get those kinds of responses from an editor when you first meet with them, for me, it's a no. It's as simple as that. It's a no. I have to, I have to gel. I have to click with that person before I hand over this baby of mine to somebody else. Because that's what a book is. It feels
Yeah,
like it's a baby.
true. Yeah.
Can I trust this person with my book? And unfortunately, in today's climate, there are so many things to worry about. You know, uh, people unashamedly steal material and publish it as their own. It happens. So these are all things you need to verify before you even speak to an author. And then, do you click with the author or not? Does the author share your vision or not? Is the editor as excited about the project as you are? Is there any developmental guidance coming from the other side or not? And then you make your choice.
So that's interesting. There are nuances you have to look out for, but also very importantly to figure out if there is any commonality of interest or just values and if you get along. So, this the fact that you and I sitting across so many different countries are able to chat is all thanks to the internet, which has now been a blessing, particularly in these times where the world is sort of shut down. So this is a case in point. But with the internet comes the ability for some people to hide behind a profile and troll or make mean comments. I want to know, have you ever had any trolling or harsh and unwarranted reviews? And if yes, then how did you deal with those?
Um, I think when I wrote Aspire to Inspire, somebody said that my book was a hodgepodge of poems that were here and there and actually aimed at nowhere. That sticks out in my mind, and I, I laugh at it. I laugh at it. Not because I think I'm a great author or because nobody's entitled to that opinion or um, there are any number of reasons that a bad review can come. Maybe it's just not that person's cup of tea, that's all.
Yeah.
Maybe they like reviewing romance and not poetry, and then they got landed up with this book that's full of, self-development leadership stuff, and it just didn't. The cup of tea just didn't taste good to them. There are any number of reasons. For me as an author, if I received 9 good reviews and 1 terrible review, it's time to celebrate. So I look at that rather than this. The second thing about a bad review, and I'd like all aspiring authors to get this. When you get bad reviews, um, it's sometimes a good thing for the book because some people want to know why is this book so hated, and they will go ahead and they will buy that book to see exactly why it is hated. So don't take it too seriously. The third thing is that if your book deserves the reviews that it gets, as an author, you need to be able to have a very objective side as well. Is there merit in what is being said to me? Really, can it improve if this is the way it goes? And if there is merit in it, there is absolutely no shame and no one stopping you from developing that book, from improving that book, because that's what life is all about. It's about developing yourself. It's about developing your book. Do you know any book that remains in the same version it is? There are always second editions and third editions,
Yeah.
and nobody can pinpoint and say, well, they were just reprints. There are probably changes made. Mostly books receive bad reviews because maybe the cover is bad, but for typo errors, um, small things, grammatical errors that haven't been picked up by an editor, or the script hasn't been proofread. And in the world of self-publishing, because you are free to upload your book anywhere at any time, some authors forego the editing process and they publish something that is not palatable. So if you want to cut the corners, you're going to expect to receive reviews like that.
Yeah, true.
uh, you just have to be open-minded about it and accept it from where it comes.
So all the budding authors who are watching this or who are going to watch this later, I think this what Nasreen just said is very, very important. You have to be big enough in your heart to sort of step out to look from the outside at your book, be a little impartial, and learn, because I think that's pretty much been the gist of what you've said to us, Nasreen, that it's writing is a learning process. For us, life is itself a learning process. And I have to
Absolutely.
ask you a question on behalf of my book club and all my book lover friends. For all of us, Turkish authors like Orhan Pamuk and Elif Shafak are incredibly popular, and we read them and reread their work. Do you have any favorites among Turkish authors? We'd love to hear about those.
I've read their work and I continue to support their work. Um, but I must be honest, I don't champ at the bit every time I see, a book released. It's not my cup of tea, simply because when I read a book, my primary reason for reading a book would be to get lost into its world, to lose myself in it, to enjoy it, to be entertained by it, but never to be inspired by writing for it. So when I read a book, it's my cutaway from the book world completely, from the authoring world completely. So I admire Elif Shafak's work. I think The 40 Rules of Love was a brilliant read. Orhan Pamuk is equally talented. My Name is Red, I read at a time when I first visited Istanbul on holiday and picked it up at a local bookstore in Sultan Ahmed. And being in that environment itself in the old city, and then reading Orhan Pamuk's, My Name is Red, it helped me to take on a different imagination about what was happening in the book. The fact that there was this writer that was commissioned to produce a different kind of art, and then eventually he's murdered and nobody knows where he is, etc. Yeah, I enjoyed having my imagination tapped into a little bit through the book, but it's not ordinarily the type of reading I would pick up. I'm rather more inspired and happy to read, Nicholas Sparks, whose writing style for me always, always, always gets me lost in a story, always leaves me in awe, and always gets my own creative juices flowing. So, authors like that inspire me more than the deep, dark kind of
Well,
stories that would be forthcoming from authors like these.
that's interesting, and you preempted my next question because I really wanted to ask you what kind of works you really enjoy reading. This is moving on to slightly more philosophical question before we go on to the rest of the questions. The health crisis in the world these days has we were chatting about this before we started the interview as well, has forced people to slow down, to take a breath, to take stock of their lives. I'm sure you've noticed this around you as well. Is this something you feel is going to make a long-term effect or a change on growth and leadership? Because these are things you write about.
I think that this health crisis has put what I call a pause on everybody's lives. But it has generated or regenerated other things for them and within them that I think everybody kind of needed in the kind of world that we are living in today. When I think, for example, about the working woman, okay, she's managing her home, she's managing her children, um, she's managing her work, um, and there's barely any time for the self. There's barely time to think, let alone get through the tasks of every day and every week, and to achieve your own personal goals. And somehow, as bad as this crisis is, I have seen a load of authors say, but hey, I needed this. This helped me to rethink my goals for me. This helped me to rethink my business goals. This helped me to change direction. This helped me start up a new arm of my business. Um, I know an author who was simply producing newsletters, for poetry lovers, and now she's gone into podcasting, and soon she will publish her own books. So, although a large part of the population in South Africa, even here in Turkey, have gone back to work, um, everybody's gone back with renewed purpose. And yes, that has had a huge impact on their health and mental wellness as well, because they've had a chance to think about how they're going to handle the second innings of going back to their careers and lives and jobs. So it's had whoever COVID has affected, yes, they were affected negatively. Some didn't make it, sadly. But when those that have come out with a new perspective of life, a renewed perspective, a renewed vision, because they're in a second innings, a second chance at something better. So, in some ways, I really, really believe that this is God's way of just saying, everybody take a break.
Just pause.
I mean, my husband and I really like exploring. And sometimes when we would be allowed certain hours out, he and I would put on our masks and go off to the local sea areas. And you'd never see certain sea creatures ordinarily. You'd never be able to see through the water, right through the water, through them. but we saw sea creatures that we've never seen in our lives before. Even they were on a break. Even they came out into nature. So yeah, and it's wonderful for us because you see a different side to life. There's been that time to see a different side to things. So it's been good for
Yeah.
the health also.
Very beautifully said. And like I was talking to a friend on how this has actually been a gift of time for a lot of people. And what my children say that this is maybe nature needed this break to heal. So they say, sometimes you need to be hospitalized or you need to be put on bed rest, and this is probably nature's way of doing it. Um, a lot of people also wanted to ask you. That you're quite the global citizen. There's the Indian connection. You were born and raised in South Africa, and then now you're making roots in Turkey. How have these varied experiences contributed to your journey as a writer?
Very much so. But for me, travel is more than just packing my bags and traipsing the world. Travel is also about meeting different people across the divide and accepting and embracing those people. You travel through people as well. Through my husband, for
Yes.
example, who's American but has an Arab background, I travel with him every day to Houston. I travel with him every day to Kuwait when he was younger. I travel with him throughout the world because he's so widely traveled. So you travel through people as well. You travel when you step out to your local market for the groceries. You travel when you take a walk out to exercise. You travel when you're in the kitchen because my cuisine is primarily Indian, but sometimes he wants to eat something that isn't Indian. And then I find myself traveling to Kuwait or traveling to America or someplace through cuisine, through something that he likes. And I get a different taste of things. So, travel for me is not about stepping outside my house with my bags packed. It's about traveling through different experiences. And yes, with an open mind and heart for all those things, it impacts my writing because I have a lot more to offer an audience um, in terms of description, in terms of experience, in terms of plot, in terms of story. I never sit on a train, for example, or a bus or an aeroplane with my ears closed. There are stories all around me. Some somebody is complaining to somebody on the bus about their daughter-in-law or their son. Somebody, the neighbor suffers from some sort of ailment and is always complaining about that. Somebody is going through a wonderful love affair right now and is discussing that with her best friend. You pick up bits and bobs everywhere. I travel through everybody, everywhere, every day. And yes, it's fodder for the books, it's fodder for my material, and I'm absolutely grateful for it in my life every day.
I want to sigh because that is what you've said just now is just so beautifully put. And a lot of people have commented saying, Jayanti says this is beautifully put, traveling through cuisine and through everyday experiences. I think what you've said is priceless. And I liked what you said at the very beginning that you travel through people and you learn to appreciate differences. What a wonderful world we would live in if we all learned to appreciate and accept each other's differences. So, yeah, thank you for highlighting this. There is there's so many writers who admire your work, and there are many teenagers and youngsters who are themselves aspiring writers and they've been writing things. Teenage isn't exactly the easiest phase of one's life. So if you were to give advice to your 15-year-old self today, what would that advice be?
I agree, the teenage years are pretty tough. Well, actually, they're not tough, but with the hormonal changes that we are going through and the changes and experiences added to that. And then sometimes, people not understanding where you are at in life, what your thought processes are at that point in time, the situation can appear bigger than it actually is. So my advice to teenagers is that if you are in the space, pick up a pen and a paper or a book and journal. It is a fabulous way to deal with your situations, your emotions, and it's also a wonderful way to make decisions. You may just stumble upon that star inside and discover that you're actually an author. So, if I had to rewind the clock and go back to my days when I was a middle child and I suffered from middle child syndrome, I wish that I had picked up my pen and paper to get through a lot of what I was thinking and feeling at that point in time. Nobody reads your journal. It's you. It's you and that piece of paper, and it remains there because often. And I advise this for writers as well who suffer from writer's block. I tell them if you've got if something is troubling you right now and it stops you from your productivity levels, you've got to pick up a pen and paper and hash it out on paper and pen. If you can't hash it out with the person that's bothering you, do it on pen and paper. Very often, you don't need to have this discussion with the person that you're bothered with. Very often, you don't need to talk to anybody about it. You just need to get it off your chest. So, for teenagers, this is an excellent way of coping. Nobody needs to know about it, just you and the pen and paper. If you are a teenager and you think you have what it takes to author a book, we are now living in an age where you don't need a publisher. Write that book, publish it. You never know. You could start making your millions from the very beginning rather than to wait until you're 30.
I have two teenage boys, and I know that they're watching. So, guys, please pay attention. The journal part, okay?
Those are the two things I would say to my 15-year-old self. Don't listen to anybody. Pick up the pen and paper and write. If something bothers you, write about it. Get it off your chest. Nobody needs to know about it. And you don't need to bother anybody else by what's troubling you either.
That's wonderful. Nasreen, I wanted to ask you, when is the new book going to release? And if you could talk to us a little more about the book, because there are, it seems to be geared towards aspiring authors. So, would you like to share some bits of info about it?
The title of the book is Exceptional Authors Are Authentic. And I'll describe it like this. Before we paint a wall, we need to make sure that there is no damage to that wall. We need to prime that wall, make sure it's cemented properly before we actually paint the wall and say, okay, now the walls in this home are complete. Same applies to any career or anything that you want to do. Authors also need to be primed for writing. And they prime themselves by adjusting, making those little shifts I talk about in their lifestyle and in their attitude towards themselves as writers before they write. Don't get me wrong. That's not to say you should not start writing unless you fix your mindset and your lifestyle. It can happen along the way. But with what I'm reading now and with the number of writers wanting to enter the industry, I am saying these are your questions. These are my answers for your questions. The book came about, Sapna, because I'm a member of many writing groups, particularly on Facebook, and I see the concerns, the common questions coming in all the time. You want to step in and you want to give everybody an answer, but you simply don't have the time to because you're author coaching, you're writing your own book. And that is when I decided that there is a readership and a market here that is looking for help, that needs to know the answers to these questions. But I'm not in a position to give it to them individually. What's the best way to do that? The best way to do that is to give them a book that becomes a reference. So, exceptional authors are authentic is not the traditional technical aspects of writing kind of book. It is about talking to the authors about their lifestyles and their mindsets and to give them a correct perspective of where to begin. It additionally comes with a workbook or a diary with which they can record what they have learned, what their observations are, what happened when they implemented things, what new ideas have they come up with, and if they were to write the same book, what new tips would they give? You know,
That's
because we want to develop them as author coaches as well. So it's a whole package. Release date plus minus a month, unless there's some, other type of problem that may come in with publishing sometimes, or there's some glitch, or any number of things can happen, when you're publishing a book, but schedule for plus minus a month. When it comes out, the world will know because obviously it will be all over social media. At the moment, we're getting the typesetting done and we're getting the covers done. We're getting the workbook finalized, and then hopefully we're ready to go.
fingers crossed, and I wish you all the very best. Nasreen, I think for me, the best indicator of a chat that happens beautifully is that you lose track of time. And I think we really have lost track of time because thank you for the candid conversation, for all the tips. This has been a masterclass for people who want to write as well, and so much beyond that. So thank you so very much, Nasreen, from all of us here, from Universe Talkies, from everybody who's watching. Thank you so much, and I look forward to picking up your book, and I'm going to have a chat with you again later on this. Thank you. Have a
The thanks
wonderful,
is all
wonderful day ahead.
mine. Thanks is all mine. Keep smiling, shining, and writing, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.